Earlier this week, Steve Paikin moderated a debate at the Toronto Region Board of Trade among 5 candidates running for mayor of the provincial capital. Here are just some of the highlights from that event.
Without further ado, let's introduce the candidates, and please everybody hold your applause till the end. Gil Penalosa is the founder and chair of 880 Cities. Stephen Punwasi is the co-founder and so-called chief data nerd of Better Dwelling. Sarah Climenhaga is an entrepreneur, environmentalist, and change advocate. Chloe Brown, policy analyst at the Future Skills Center. And John Tory has the job the other 4 want. Please welcome everybody now to the stage. Public transit. What needs doing? Sarah Climenhaga, a minute to you.
I believe we need to drop mandatory fares, first for seniors, then for the rest of the city. Every transit trip saves the city money. We shouldn't have any barriers in the way to ride transit. I believe we need to make accessibility a huge priority. It's not. We are still shutting too many people out of our transit system, which is bad for the city and bad for the people who are being shut out. We need to make low-cost rapid transit routes throughout the city on every major route. And I say low cost because I don't mean many years of delay or many hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean low cost solutions to giving transit priority. And finally, we need to sustainably fund transit. When I mention fare-free transit, people say, oh no, we can't afford that. But we have a serious funding problem at the TTC already. So we need to sustainably fund it, and we need to work with residents on all the different ways that we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Punwasi, a minute to you.
So to reach our climate goals, we need to get more people on public transit, and for that to happen, it needs to be fast, efficient, and cost-effective. Currently, it's none of those things, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that it's poorly financed. We can't ask taxpayers to start paying more right now. We're going into a recession. So that's why we need to diversify revenues. That's why I'm proposing that we take the surplus TTC land and then turn it into city-owned shopping malls, offices, and even housing, and produce a recurring dividend that we can use to finance our transit's both operation and expansion. Tokyo does this, and they generate about 30% of the operating revenue for their system.
Mr. Penalosa.
Clinton West, it was designed and contracted, was going to be above ground. One day, Doug Ford wakes up and says, what if we put it underground? It's going to cost only $2.4 billion. And Mr. Tory said nothing. He didn't even accept to send communications to Premier Ford. If I had been mayor, I would have gone to Eglinton with a gigantic train mug with all of the 2.4, all of the zeros, so that people know how much 2.4 billion. Said, Premier Ford, thank you for putting 2.4 billion into public transit, but don't bury it. Same train, same speed, fewer stations.
Okay,
Let's put more transit in Etobicoke, in York, and in Scarborough. Let's not bury $2.4 billion.
I'm going to give Mr. Tory a chance to respond, and then Ms. Brown gets the last word in this
I'll just
segment.
say that the plan is a partnership, and we all came to an agreement. Everybody had to put a bit of wine in their water, and everybody had things that they wanted to see done. But the bottom line is we agreed on a plan among 3 governments, never been done before, and on how to pay for it. And I would just say this, you're hearing sounds of people who want to change that plan. And I'm saying to you, we have to proceed with the plan that we've agreed to, because otherwise we fall into the trap that we've been in before. And I think it is just crucial that we move forward. I have the experience of working with the other governments, being a part of that partnership, and I want to finish the job for once in this city to actually get a plan built that we've agreed to build.
Thanks, Ant. Thank you. Ms. Brown, to you.
So John Tory's Smart Track is a mix of the Big Move, which was published by Metrolinx about 15 years ago now, and a mix of Transit City, which was David Miller's. For him to say that he's the only person to get transit moving would be a lie. There have been successive mayors that have come through and have pitched government different ideas. The only reason why it's working now is because Doug wants subways, subways, subways. So it's just him living out Doug Ford's dream right now, and Doug luckily is in the position to get that to happen. Smart Track hasn't worked, and that was his idea. So I really am just blown away that this is the position he's taking when he introduced Smart Track, 8 years ago, and it still hasn't happened?
Okay, we now move on to our second question, which is about housing. I'm told 70% of Toronto neighborhoods apparently have antiquated zoning bylaws that prohibit modest increases in density. And I wonder whether any of the 5 of you plan to do anything about that.
We need more affordable housing, and we need it fast, but we can't get it from, the industry's already demonstrated that they will not build it. As soon as prices started to drop, they canceled 4,000 units, and we can blame that on cost overruns and inflation, but the reality is, in 2018, they did this they also did this. And this isn't really an issue of we've run out of zoning. They're literally just canceling the apartments. And they're doing this to maintain a price floor. They need that 13% margin, which is good business, but it's bad city building. So that's why I'm proposing that we, instead of selling off our city land for cheap to developers, we actually develop it into a revenue-neutral, city-owned, purpose-built rentals.
Chloe Brown, you're up next.
So just to start, I don't blame the development industry for not building housing. One of the biggest problems is that residents groups can go to the Ontario Land Tribunal and for $400 stop into development. So it's honestly like, it's a two-prong approach where it's just like we need to direct the city solicitor to limit appeals that are filed that are not based on an sound engineering or architectural arguments. We need to, on top of changing rezoning, I'm trying to implement a land value tax, which is something that Metrolinx looked into during the big move as a land capture mechanism. So that means instead of taxing the properties that are on the land, we tax the land itself. That'll allow us to create a stabilized tax rate, and also it will allow us to use data to drive the way that we create revenue. Additionally, when we talk about tenants, yes, legalizing rooming houses is important, but as it stands, the rent-safe system doesn't even cover public and private tenants, so we need to change that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Penalosa.
If you have one age in place and you have a big house and you cannot afford it, you can split it in four as of right. We're going to have a one-stop shop at City Hall where we will answer all your questions, financial, legal, design, and we're going to have thousands and thousands of units. Imagine people all over the city. 80% of our city is only for single-family zoning. Now we're going to allow citywide to be able to subdivide. We're going to end with exclusionary zoning. The owners are going to benefit because now they're going to have income for life renting out those 3 additional units. Who's going to do the renovation? Medium-sized contractors. So the medium-sized contractors generating lots of employment. And the biggest benefit is going to be for renters that are going to have possibilities to live anywhere in the city. And as for the arterials, I'm going to allow also as of right to densify based on the width of the road. So developers are going to save 3 to 4 years. They're not going to waste time in lawyers and negotiating and all kinds of things. They're going to skip 4 years. There's going to be a lot more housing, and this is going to be housing where people are going to be able to live. And I think a lot of these issues are appealing to everybody. We have not had clear rules.
Okay,
and finally, in the plan that is public, it has to be 100% affordable. 2/3 affordable, 1/3 deep affordable. Not market rate on the land that all of us own.
Okay, Mr. Penalosa made some, stand by one, because Mr. Penalosa made a comment saying that John Tory's record was an affordable housing failure, and I should give him a chance to respond to that.
Well, to put some facts on the table, Steve, the fact is, as of today, there are 19,000 affordable housing units in development. There have been built in the last 2 years, and this is crucial to our efforts to help people who are experiencing homelessness, 3,800 supportive housing units. People are living in most of that 3,800 today, living in it today. This has been an extraordinary effort. We have, over the last couple of years, approved garden suites, laneway suites, which have been referenced. We have already in place a vacant home tax to free up some of those units for the rental market. But the key going forward is, and this is what I'm seeking a mandate on, the 2 most important elements of the 5-point plan are to put in place a zoning regime that would have people able to build mid-rise development on busy corridors, as has been discussed by others, and secondly, and very importantly, to expand the range of housing options available in neighborhoods across the city to include triplexes, duplexes. You know, there are neighborhoods today, beaches, Forest Hill, Rosedale, Leaside, North Toronto, where you can find all over the place duplexes and triplexes that have been there for decades. And all of a sudden, somehow it became a bad thing. They fit in well, and they can be done sensitively going forward, but we need that housing.
We haven't heard from Sarah Climenhaga yet.
I think we need to take a totally different approach. Rather than saying, oh, the residents should lose, or oh, the developers should lose, should be win-win for both. Residents have told me consistently they're not opposed to housing. They're opposed to the problems that come with poorly done housing. They're opposed to too much traffic, not enough green space. So we can have developers and residents in the room from the beginning in the city so that these problems get ironed out before the building starts and then with smooth sailing after that. So I think there's a lot of room for participation. I just wanted to say about this issue of a mandate. We want a mandate to go forward for 4 years. No, I think that democracy is more than one vote and then we do what we want for 4 years. Democracy is residents have to be involved all the time. If they want their neighborhoods to look look a certain way. Let's work with them on that. So there's so many opportunities for housing, both right away, as Gil mentioned, having homeowners be able to create more units, and also in the long term by having a better relationship between city developers and residents. And if we do it transparently and with good involvement, we can really have some great projects.
We now go on with question 3, and that is about business. What can the city do to make this a better place to establish and run a business? We'll have 5 opening statements, a minute each, and Sarah Climenhaga, you go first.
First of all, we need to think of business as essential. During the last couple of years, we closed independent businesses that were really struggling. We treated them, you're not essential, but the pot shop's essential. The LCB is essential, but you, mom and dad, store owner, you're not essential. So I think we need to change that. All business is essential. It's part of the fabric of our community. It's the people that make our food, that serve, that bring us clothes, whatever it is, art, music. So we need to make business essential, first of all. Second of all, we need to be have Toronto be a place where employees can live. So we have to address this housing issue, because if employees aren't living here, if they're living an hour away, it's going to be a lot more difficult to attract good labor. And then we also need to make it easy for people to get around. So again, I talked about what we can do for transit. Walkability is key. We want Toronto to be easy. It should be easy to get to your workplace. So we need to pay attention to transportation as one of the key success factors for business.
Stephen Punwasi.
So I'm an entrepreneur, so every single part of my platform was about creating new business opportunities and new sort of sources of revenue. We have 2 ideas that we're pumped about, and that's a municipal payment processor and a community venture fund. So a municipal payment processor would leverage the collective size of small and medium-sized businesses and negotiate credit card processing fees down, so they would regain that 1 to 2 points of non-productive costs that large businesses don't have to pay, which they can then reinvest back into their businesses. And the Community Venture Fund is essentially just a venture accelerator to invest in our innovators. Right now, we are known as being the largest real estate bubble in the world. We should be known for fostering business and innovation.
One of the biggest things that I think we can do to help business is modernize our government. As a policy analyst, it's always jarring to me that the government is constantly outsourcing its private technologies to third-source parties when it has the know-how already in-house to do this. As a millennial, I constantly find myself bashing my head against the wall of bureaucracy that is any sector. Whether it's manufacturing, skilled trades, healthcare, there's this wall of corporate bureaucracy that is slowing us all down from actually getting good work done. And that requires us investing in technologies to help us remove some jobs and roles that are no longer helping the process. As someone who is a big advocate for technology, I see that there's a lot of opportunity to make the City of Toronto user-friendly by hiring user experience researchers and designers to change the way that our physical, digital, and social infrastructure match up and give us the same outcomes. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Penalosa.
The city is falling apart. When people are walking down the street and the garbage cans are overfull, the doors are broken, they go to the parks and the washrooms are closed 8 months of the year, they're going to take public transit and the escalators are broken, people decide to move, especially for affordability. I'm not making this up. People said, oh, no one is going to leave the Silicon Valley in California because they got all the universities. Well, actually, people are moving. There are a lot of the best companies like Hewlett-Packard, like Oracle, they're moving away from the Bay Area and moving to other cities like Texas, states like Texas and Florida. Toronto, we are competing with Quebec, with Alberta, with Florida, with everyone. By the way, Alberta is really shameful. Those of us who use public transit, we have seen everywhere. Alberta is saying, if you want quality of life, come to Alberta. If you want affordable housing, come to Alberta. I mean, Mr. Tory, I know you don't use too much public transit, but you would be really infuriated by seeing every single step with a sign of Alberta attracting people for quality of life.
Thank you, Mr. Penalosa. John Tory, you are next.
You know, at the end of the day, the ability for people to find affordable housing and to look after their families is going to be best enhanced by them having a good, secure job. And I take my record with respect to creating the tax class, with respect to a host of other things, some of which I mentioned, Digital Main Street, Cafe TO, and I take as well my role as the chief salesperson for the city. People forget that before the pandemic, which did interrupt a lot of this work, I was the chief salesperson, and the film industry will tell you, the tech industry will tell you, I didn't do it by myself, but I led the team. I went where I had to go. I received people I had to receive. I made sure that new people who came here to invest were welcomed here in the way that you would expect. And I made sure that people who were already here got the support they needed to flourish. And so I will just say that I am seeking the privilege of serving in this job so I can continue to do that and make sure that people continue to invest here and create jobs here, which was happening at a North American leading pace before the pandemic. And the pandemic did interrupt things. And am I satisfied with some of the things that relate to what you see with your eyes as you go around the city? No, I'm not. Am I aware of the fact that hundreds of our workers were still deployed at the beginning of this year, helping in long-term care homes and in shelters and not able to do the kinds of jobs that will lead things to be better in future years? I'm aware of that. It will be better. It has to be better. It can be better, and I'll make sure that it is.
Can we now move on to the next segment, which is question 4, and it is in fact about red tape and whether there is too much in this city on business for them to operate properly. And we're going to do 5 one-minute statements, starting with Stephen Punwasi.
Yeah, so red tape's code for regulations, and some exist for good reasons and some don't. Eliminating them doesn't guarantee that the city will be able to execute anything any faster, because we do have low red tape situations where the city hasn't been able to execute. In the automotive industry, they have red tape, and they can build a car really fast if you eliminated all of the regulations, but it's not something that benefits all of society. So what did they do? They learned to automate, innovate, and streamline their processes. And that's what our open source city plan does. We're going to build city software in collaboration with other municipalities, some that have already agreed to work with me on this. And we will collect and streamline approval processes, create new systems for data, so that we can actually accelerate and pinpoint the bottlenecks that hold up all of these business applications and permits, as well as other municipal bottlenecks.
Chloe Brown, you're up next.
There's so much opportunity that is currently lacking in our government because it doesn't ask the users what it needs. Right now, the systems are designed for reporting. So like as an analyst, like I get all my numbers for reporting, but people who use the system, it's not friendly for them. And this is where the development industry, like they get a lot of gruff, but the permit system's not built for them. It's built for bureaucrats to report numbers, and I would like to work with workers to redevelop these systems directly, and I think there's a huge opportunity there to save money on overhead by moving to technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Penalosa.
I have run successfully organizations in the public, in the private, in the not-for-profit, and in all of them, if you have not ended red tape within the first 2 years, you are out. Mr. Tory has not ended red tape in over 8 years, and he wants more time for it. With our Homes for Everyone, we're going to end red tape. In the renovation, people are going to be able to renovate as of right and one-stop shop to get all the answers. On all of the arterials, people are going to be able, developers are going to do homes as of right. So that means that they're going to jump 3 to 4 years. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be faster. That is ending red tape. So let's not see what Mr. Tory is going to do in the next 4. Let's see what he has not done in the last 8.
Just quick question for the audience, since I believe in participatory democracy. Could someone put up their hand, or anyone, how many bylaws do you think the City of Toronto has? Just guess. Don't put your hand up if you don't know. Anyone? Hand up. Guess. Do
you know?
Anyone? Come on, one of you guys. Guess how many bylaws? 500? Another guess. I'm running out of time. Quick, guess something else. No one wants to guess. 1,000. 200,000 bylaws in the City of Toronto, around 40,000 employees. So each employee could spend their entire job enforcing 5 bylaws, and maybe we'd enforce them. So that's ridiculous, and that's why we have such a lack of clarity, such a lack of enforcement. So, I mean, let's start with that. Let's start with eliminating everything that's not necessary, that's not enforced, that's not important, and prioritize what is important. And then, let's just take an attitude towards permits. Is something going to be good for the city? If it is, get rid of the permit process. And let's have faster response times. Answer our phones within 24 to 72 hours. All of these things can make our city work so much better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Tory, you are next.
So I think the challenge for us is to find ways for people to deal with the government more easily. I'm going to appoint, as part of this platform, a red tape champion on the council whose job it's going to be to identify places where we may not have to have permits anymore. But I think the real nub of what we have to do is to make it easier for people to deal with government and get out of the way so that they can do the most important thing in terms of the overall well-being of the community, which is to create jobs and economic activity.
Thank you. I know this audience wants to join me in thanking the candidates for coming today and participating in this debate.
That's just some of what was said during the debate held by the Toronto Board of Trade this past week. For the full 70 minutes, please visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda or our Twitter feed, twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.